everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Back at it with another video. I wanted to do a little bit of like an Astro Musings and wrap on some of these conjunctions that are going to be taking place to Chiron. More specifically, I'm going to be talking about the Jupiter-Venus Chiron conjunction that is taking place in Aries. And the dates range a little bit, but I think you guys are going to be feeling this actually the most from the 28th of February 2023 all the way through the 15th of March. So we've got about 2 weeks where we're going to see some of these aspects. The Venus conjunction is obviously going to move a lot more quickly, but we're going to see that the range of being so close to Chiron is going to bring up lots of Chiron themes. And I really want to tailor this lecture revolving around ways to focus on healing the self. I think that's what a lot of the Chiron and Aries is about. I'm going to give you guys some herbal and crystal recommendations and some ways to be able to work with this energy. And I'm going to give you some takeaways in terms of what to watch for over these next 2 weeks and how the archetype of Chiron, Jupiter, and Venus may be just kind of coming into our day-to-day life or the headlines and things that are going on in the world. If you're new to my channel, thanks for joining me. I'm a Western astrologer. I focus on working both with the Sabian symbols as well as the art of tarot to better understand what's going on in the cosmos. If you like my content and you want to see more of it, make sure you click subscribe below. You'll be alerted as to when I have new videos coming out on the channel. We're putting out videos 4 times a week. We've got horoscopes and new and full moon reports and much, much more. To those of you guys who are already subscribed or members, thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. I appreciate it. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. So essentially what we're seeing here, this is a stellium of placements in Aries, okay? So we've got Venus, the goddess, love, relationships, sweetness, hanging out in the Mars ruled sign of Aries. So she's kind of got her armor on right now. There is this sense of like angry feminine energy. And she's getting ready to meet with Jupiter, who is seen almost as the king of all of the gods, who is very wise and noble. And we know that anything that touches Jupiter is going to be magnified. So it's going to be bigger, whether that's in a sense of bigger problems, bigger challenges, or just global themes in general. And then we've got Chiron, the wounded healer. This is known as a like an asteroid that I work with, one of my big kind of top 4 or 5 asteroids that I take a look at in natal charts. And all of the archetypes are coming together because we're seeing a conjunction. So this is a stellium, 3 or more planets and or placements in the same sign. This is going to be really affecting anybody who's got placements between 10 and let's say 10 to 15 degrees of Aries, okay? Sun, moon, rising, personal planets. If you've got a north node there, if you have your own natal Jupiter or Venus or Chiron there, pay attention, it's extra personal for you. So essentially when we think about these stelliums, right? I get people who ask me about stelliums a lot. It's when we have, like I said, 3 or more planets. Now Chiron is not a planet, but we're going to treat it as so for the topic today. I think it's really important because Chiron is very underestimated, both in transit as well as in the birth chart. I think we're going to see that this is the very beginning because I find that Jupiter has a tendency to magnify or blow things up preemptively before we see other transits that go through the skies. So we know that eclipses are going to start happening in the sign of Aries this spring, and we're going to see the very first solar eclipse in Aries in April, followed by we'll have more eclipses that are a part of the Scorpio-Taurus cycle, but really getting into, especially in 2024, a lot of themes in regards to Chiron. The North Node will meet with Chiron, so we're going to collectively be working through some Chiron-related themes. Jupiter being there now, I feel like, is giving us the preemptive opportunity to see how this is kind of taking the world by storm globally, some of these Chiron Aries things. I'm going to talk about that. So specific dates that I'm going to be touching on will be first, March 1st, 2023. This is when we're first going to see Jupiter and Venus come into conjunction at 12 degrees. And we know that Venus is very sweet, loving, maybe a little bit challenged in her fall placement in the sign of Aries. But that conjunction to Jupiter could manifest for some as big love, big opportunities for generosity, for abundance. And on a personal level, I feel like I do think this is going to sprinkle a little bit of sweetness for everyone, even though I think that there can be some dealing with wounds with Chiron, and definitely Venus, Jupiter, and Aries is going to bring up some of the more aggression, frustration that comes with a Mars-ruled sign. So sometimes we have to really acknowledge the wound. We may find that we have a conflict, a fight, we hash it out with somebody, and there in turn we're able to heal a problem or make the relationship stronger. I have thought for some time that the Chiron and Aries transit was going to deal a lot with self-esteem issues or feeling like an outsider or an outcast. Certainly I feel like that is a theme for some groups throughout these last several years of having this transit. And it has manifested as individuals, I think, harnessing anger and frustration. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how that can manifest in the body under the guise of like inflammation or other Aries-related injuries or illnesses that we may start seeing springing up more so. I want to read to you guys first the Sabian symbol for that specific conjunction between Jupiter and Venus. And you guys know that when it's at a specific degree, I round up. And so I think that this is a really great example of rounding up because you've got Chiron at 13 degrees. So even though these two are at 12, I work with a very small 2 or 3 degree orb. I'm going to read this all as like a 13 degree. And the Sabian symbol hopefully is going to give us a little bit more insight and wisdom as to what this might bring about for us collectively. Remember that the North Node is ruled by Venus. So as Venus makes any aspects with outer planets, we're going to kind of feel that reverberating outward, and it does have an impact and it does affect the North Node. All right, so we've got page 44, and this is Aries 13. An unsuccessful bomb explosion. The theme is haste makes waste. The symbol speaks to failed initiative and the supremacy of good or evil. It also speaks to the ability of the world to protect itself against the destructive acts of individuals. The image of an unsuccessful bomb explosion is one of the destructive images that came through Elsie Wheeler and that Mark Jones tried to keep out. Each of these images were described as reverse symbols in his 1953 book. The focus on the symbol is poor planning and the need to find a better way to accomplish objectives. The negative implications of this image are downplayed. The implication here is that evil is only punished, whereas an individual is successful in accomplishing an evil deed, and that there is little penalty in life for simply attempting to carry out that evil plan that fails. As long as he is unsuccessful, there is still hope for such a misguided individual. On a practical level, the symbol speaks of the old saying, haste makes waste. At its highest, the symbol represents perfectionism on a tendency to regard any result or outcome that doesn't fully square to plan as failure and refusal to stop trying until success is at hand. Negative would be impulsive and careless planning. The accent is on carelessness and unpredictability. The tendency to rush through things, to overlook important details, overconfidence, or neglect is likely to be at the bottom of things not turning out as expected. It may also be that someone else's mistake is a lucky one for you. Your greatest advantage lies in being patient and thorough. Take a deep breath and relax. Go over the plans one more time and don't stop trying. Guard against impulsiveness or acting before you think. Avoid setting unrealistic deadlines or trying to beat the clock. Haste makes waste is the caution of the day. Stepping stones would be impatient, carelessness, recklessness, rash, poor planning, or impulsive. I find it interesting that it talks about a bomb explosion, and we know that the Sabian symbols have had a tendency to play out literally or figuratively. So I don't necessarily think this is a situation where it's going to be literally, considering the fact that technically the conjunction is happening at a 12, but I do feel like it can represent poor planning, also people not being held accountable for some of their evil or wrongdoings, perhaps maybe where something falls apart and there was some diabolical plan, and then we realized that because the plan kind of got messed up, that it's really exposing or really showing where there has been a tendency for people to not have the best intentions, right? I'll just kind of leave it at that. When I think about Aries being cardinal fire, the first, sign of the zodiac, I feel that this is about impulsiveness, intuition, the tendency to just want to get up and run and initiate something, begin something. And so Aries energy is about life, right? As are all of the fire signs, but this is about that first kind of instinctual, okay, this is how I react to things. I feel like this is about learning not to just react, because immediate reactions or judgment, whether that's on other people or ourselves, can have a ripple effect, which in turn can negatively affect other people. I think about how Aries is also this kind of symbol for military, or for soldiers, or for veterans. And I do think that in the scheme of these transits, whether it's in the immediate next 2 weeks or the ones that will play into 2024, I feel like we're going to be hearing more about these topics. Obviously, it's kind of hard to turn on the news or look at anything that's going on in the mainstream media without this constant bombardment of talks of war, and really fueling talks of war. And I think that you guys are going to see over the next week or two just this becoming really inflamed. What I don't understand is that Aries does represent life, right? It represents growth and, needing to kind of go at life in your own way and figuring it out and adapting, right? And so when you connect that to Chiron and Venus and Jupiter, I think we're going to start to see where perhaps a pro-war mentality or an agenda to push that, in military kind of drive, at least here in the United States, it's not actually creating life. Just reading some headlines earlier today that were coming out of Ukraine in regards to soldiers that are on the front line, and it seems that they're spending on average about 4 hours on the front line before losing their life to service. Now, obviously, it's going to vary, but if they're giving averages, it's kind of a scary thing you're going into, knowing that you're going to go and be fighting on the front lines, and that perhaps you may not be there for very long, right? So, what does Aries connect to archetypally? Military, veterans, soldiers, people who are in occupations involving fire. So I think of like firefighters, first aid, people who are going to be on the front lines of something, but also gangs, right? Invaders. People who might be a little dangerous. Aries is also connected to metal and tools. So I think we're going to be hearing more about that, how people are learning about, making their own things, fixing their own things, developing skills, and learning how to work with metals. Particularly iron is associated with Aries in general. Aries has this connection to new beginnings, initiation, and leadership. So I think that this is transit-wise encouraging a lot of individuals to be focusing on these topics. Now, in regards to the zodiac and the body, each particular sign has connections to the body. In particular, Aries does connect to various parts of the body. For starters, the head, right? So it's the first thing that you do when you wake up. You get up, you wake up. This is about the head, Aries. And it's connected to the brain, the skull, and the face. So people who have natal strong placements in Aries can have a tendency to have focus in these areas. They can be more prone to having issues with this, especially if you have Aries on your 6th house cusp, or maybe you have a natal Chiron in Aries, or like a Saturn, Venus in Aries aspect. And they're more prone to headaches, migraines, and head-related issues, impact, trauma, things that have kind of affected the skull. Aries is also associated with the eyes, which is known as the window to the soul and represents our individual perspective on the world. So I think that, especially with like Venus being there and Jupiter being there, I think that we may find that there's going to be more information, or there's going to be more opportunities to start healing some of these ailments. I'm not saying everybody's going to start having all these health problems, but we might just notice that it's kind of coming up a little bit more. It's also associated with the nose and the ability to sense and detect new smells and new scents, and also the sinuses. So I'm a natal moon in Aries. Throughout the last few years, having like Saturn and Pluto square and all these transits, just years of really gnarly sinus infections and migraines. And so I've noticed, as Venus has been getting close, spent like all morning down with a migraine, just can't seem to knock it, can't get rid of it. I think a lot of it is just where I'm living and just changes with the season and the pressure, but I'm still definitely feeling this very strongly, especially at 12, because 12 has this energy of needing to rest and recuperate and sleep and kind of just have alone time. Some people may be feeling that they just need more time to rest and kind of recuperate if they are dealing with any of these ailments. Aries does have some connections to the teeth, although Saturn Capricorn represents most of the skin, teeth, and bones, but Aries in particular are connected to the teeth in a sense of biting and tearing, and the action that we assert when it comes to actually eating. So there is some connection there. So I'm wondering if people are having dental issues, right? It's possible, especially with conjunctions to Saturn that's taking place simultaneously. And then finally, the adrenals. So the adrenal glands are connected with Aries, and they're responsible for regulating the fight or flight responses, which is an instinctual response to new or challenging situations. Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb here to speak for myself, but I feel like it's probably one of the areas that has taken the biggest hit these last few years has definitely been my adrenal glands, because of just the constant turbulence and the things that have been going on with some of the stressful events around the world, and just, how do you respond to that? How do you rebound from constantly feeling like everywhere you turn, there's just something going on? So it's taken me some time to realize that the cure for that is to be really focusing on staying grounded and actually like disconnecting and disengaging with some things, just giving my adrenals a little bit of a break, right? And I think especially just, for a lot of people living in the United States, that nonstop, constantly working, grinding, worrying kind of mentality definitely gets us into some challenging health-related situations. Now, specifically, Aries also has connections to baldness, naturally. That's just what it has. Inflammatory diseases, which I think is going to be really important, because I think one of the themes that we're going to see with some of these transits that's in next year is learning more about metals. Metals in our food, metals in our bodies, metals from pharmaceuticals, and the effect that has on the inflammatory response within the body, and that when we are not aware of that, or when we're not eating an anti-inflammatory diet, or not managing also emotions, right? Anger, resentment, frustration, all these fun Mars, Aries things, where we may be more prone to having issues with inflammation in the body, and we can see it also in the skin. Dizziness, that's something else that comes from Aries, as well as epilepsy. So I'm wondering if we're going to be hearing more, especially on a health kind of perspective, about some of these things, and people noticing that they're experiencing some of these symptoms. Now, specifically when we look at the connection between both Jupiter and Chiron in the sign of Aries, there is a connection here with high blood pressure, people being on high blood pressure medication. I also think of the Venus-Jupiter conjunction as the themes of this ongoing conversation of youth in at least the United States, but mostly in other parts of the world as well, who are dealing with, diabetes, or being pre-diabetic, or just these large amounts of younger people who are struggling with weight. And this push, to talk more about, well, we're just going to medicate the kids, but nobody's really wanting to talk about fitness and eating healthy and knowing where your food is coming from and learning about servings, They're just talking more about being able to treat the problem. Some of the similar themes to what we saw during the pandemic. So watch for that. The Jupiter Chiron can have just more of like a broad effect on high blood pressure. When we see Venus come into Aries with its conjunction to Chiron, this is going to represent connections to veins and issues with veins, because that's Venus's connection in regards to the body. Specifically, Aries does deal with blood and iron, like I said, so I think we're going to hear more about iron deficiencies and the fact that maybe we need to be taking these supplements, among other supplements, to really support our physical bodies. And also blood and oxygen, although that has more of a connection to Mars and Gemini, but Mars is in Gemini, and Mars is the dispositor of all of these particular planets, because Mars rules Aries. And so I'll go back over here. Let me show you guys this. So Mars being in Mars being in Gemini, Mars is also in harmony, forming sextiles with all these planets in Aries, and Mars and Gemini can be about the media. It can be about articles that are being published, videos, stuff that's coming out on local news channels. Very tickled to see the Wall Street Journal post something, I think it was either yesterday or today, basically talking about the fact that it's very likely that the pandemic is as a result of a lab leak. I think we're going to hear a lot of perspective over the next 3 weeks. Not all of it is going to be valid. In fact, a lot of it is going to be manipulated and it's not going to be true. And I don't think it's going to be limited purely to just health. I think it's also going to be in regards to what's being projected in regards to the war, and much more. Ritual themes in regards to working with some of this energy. If you're noticing that there are health ailments or relationship issues or self-esteem issues that are kind of coming up, if you're somebody who's like a rock hound and you want to be able to work with that, I would recommend working with diamonds, bloodstone, carnelian, red jasper, or ruby. Now, all of these particular stones are going to have connections, particularly to Aries. So some of you guys may already have a diamond or a ruby. But if you're somebody who is much more wanting to work with like the stones for metaphysical reasons and their properties, definitely bloodstone, carnelian, and jasper can be really wonderful. All have connections to courage and strength and vitality and working with the blood, and also being able to give us more stamina, and be connecting more so to our inner passions. Whether you want to lay down and you want to put that on your forehead, or you just want to be carrying a stone in your pocket or wearing something around your neck these next couple of weeks, it can be really helpful in being able to combat some of the more difficult aspects of Chiron and really help us lean more into the awareness of what's going on in the willingness to heal ourselves. Now, if you like to work with herbs in particular, something I would recommend would be rosemary, ginger, nettle, thyme, and cayenne. Also, I would say like garlic can be really wonderful. Anything that's going to bring a little bit of heat, right? So if you want to be throwing some raw ginger into your tea in the mornings, if you want to be focusing on trying to cook more with rosemary or thyme, you can do that. If you want to spice things up and throw a little bit of like cayenne into your food. I mean, there's really simple, kitchen magic, but food is medicine, right? So being able to work with some of that stuff. I know me, like I said, just having had so many issues with my sinuses and also with migraines, something that's been really helpful is focusing on eating an anti-inflammatory diet, really managing, not eating as much processed food or really trying to eat none at all, and trying to incorporate more lemon and ginger into my routine. But also rosemary can be wonderful for scalp sprays and things that can be encouraging better circulation in the scalp and hair growth. Not many people know that, but it's really potent. And rosemary is very protective in terms of its qualities in a metaphysical sense as well. So rosemary baths can be wonderful. Nettle tea can be wonderful. So you guys can be working with that. Ritual recommendations would be fire magic. So something as simple as lighting a candle and sitting and meditating, writing out intentions and things that you're wishing to release and burn so you can heal. If you want to have a bonfire and focus on fire gazing, if you want to be working with hot water for, detoxing in the morning, or hot baths, really working with fire is something that's going to be really helpful over the next few weeks. I myself been working with I got like an infrared mask. I have an infrared pad that I've been using. Actually, anytime my dog has had an injury, I have like a French bulldog that's just like a hot mess. He's always running around the house and pulling something or doing something. And so sometimes he'll get strict crate rest, and he'll get an infrared light. And usually within a day or two, he's kind of back up and running, but really wonderful for like muscle strains and bruising and anything like that. So I've been using that during the winter months because it's really great on my legs and on my feet for improving circulation. Maybe you guys have seen that if you go to like an acupuncturist. But now I've been using one that's been on my face. And so I think maybe I contribute that a little bit to Jupiter and Venus and Chiron coming together. Now in astrology, Chiron is associated with wounding and healing. Okay, that's what he's known for. It's about a journey towards self-discovery. In Greek mythology, basically his archetype was a centaur. He was a creature that had half upper body of a human and the lower body of a horse. So I think it's really cool, the fact that Chiron's coming in conjunction with Jupiter. I could see a lot of people really looking at horse magic or working with horses for healing. Maybe that's like your animal or your spirit totem. But unlike other centaurs, he was very gentle, okay? Very wise, skilled in medicine, music, and hunting. He became a mentor to many heroes, and he was known for his kindness and his wisdom. Now, one day between a battle that he had with other centaurs, he was accidentally struck by a poisoned arrow. And being immortal, he couldn't die, but he suffered immense pain, and he had to find a way to heal himself. So there he ended up dedicating the rest of his life to helping others and using his skills to help those who were sick or wounded. So the story of Chiron essentially symbolizes the fact that healing can come from our deepest wounds. And Chiron's own wound ends up becoming his gift, and he uses that to be able to bring healing and wholeness to other people. So in a birth chart, this can indicate the potential for healing. So everybody's got a Chiron. You want to look at the sign and the placement and how it's aspected to better understand. Now, when Jupiter comes into conjunction with Chiron, we know that Jupiter represents expansion and growth and abundance, as well as optimism and higher learning. And Chiron symbolizes wounding. So when we combine these two together, there's going to be a focus on healing past wounds through a journey of personal growth and expansion. Now, I, for one, have been watching this transit happen for a number of clients, whether it's their own natal Chiron return, which happens closer to your 50s, or they're having a North Node coming into conjunction with Chiron, or maybe Jupiter's activating their natal Chiron. And it's been really interesting to watch, because people with this aspect in their chart have a tendency to showcase that they've experienced, deep pain, right, and trauma, if you have the Jupiter Chiron conjunction natally. And it will lead to a desire for spiritual or intellectual growth and learning how to kind of combat that in a more spiritual way, and hopefully also develop a more meaningful life. This conjunction in particular can also indicate a desire to want to help other people heal and grow through teaching, mentorship, and spiritual guidance. I'm having this conjunction setting up in my 7th house, and it's getting really close to my moon, which is my 10th house lord. And so I'm finding that this is becoming much more and more, a little bit more of my focus in terms of wanting to use astrology less as future predicting, more as empowerment and teaching other people how to really kind of come into some of their own placements. I'm excited to see what this does, because I feel like it's gonna encourage a lot of people to go on a journey towards self-discovery and healing through growth, and also through personal expansion and education. So I've seen a lot of people who have been like, I want to learn Reiki, I want to learn tapping, I'm learning about self-defense, or I'm learning about martial arts, or I'm learning about yoga, things that can really kind of connect them to that physical aspect, but also give them that outlet and learn how to better balance their spiritual energies. Now, when we look at this triple conjunction that's setting up, right, we know that throwing Venus into the mix also is going to be kind of colorful because we have two very strong, more like masculine type archetypes with Chiron and Jupiter, especially in the sign of Aries. But when we throw Venus into the mix, it's got a little bit of a twist. Venus represents relationships, right? Love, beauty, pleasure, harmony. And we know that Chiron is healing and Jupiter is going to be about awareness. So when Venus comes into conjunction with Chiron and these energies combine, there can be a focus on healing past relationship wounds and overcoming issues in regards to self-worth and self-acceptance. Now, this can take the form of just the self, the body, owning up to your own imperfections, your role in what might have gone wrong in a relationship, the list goes on. But people who have this aspect in their natal chart have experienced deep emotional pain from past relationships, leading to a sense sometimes of feeling inadequate, dealing with low self-esteem, and also issues with intimacy. But this conjunction gives us the opportunity for healing and growth through love and acceptance of oneself and others more fully. Venus is in her fall in Aries, so she's already kind of struggling a little bit. Jupiter, I think, is very powerful in its placement in the sign of Aries. It's very comfortable in a fire sign. And I think with all three of these coming together, there is going to be this focus on a journey towards self-love, healing, and inner harmony. And that it's okay to get angry and frustrated, but it's not okay to hold it in our bodies. It's not okay to hold it in our mind or even in our heart space. And you guys are going to see more of this as the North Node goes into Aries. This makes me think about those memes, you know, that say like the feminine urge to. And I was thinking about that and I was like, yeah, it's the feminine urge to heal, right? The feminine urge to heal, to want to nurture, to want to take care. And I wonder how this may potentially have an effect on the masculine. Now, I'm not saying men in general, but Aries does represent masculine energy. It's Mars. This is male sexual organs at its finest. And I think that this is really talking about how men are learning that being soft or being receptive or being open to learning about healing trauma or healing past relationship issues or healing issues of feeling inadequate is actually a beautiful thing and something that should be encouraged more in society. So I think it's going to be about the feminine urge to help the masculine heal, to hold space for that, because that's really what feminine energy needs. It needs masculine energy to be masculine, to hold space. So I'm going to say women, people who are women, identify as women, feel safe in their femininity. And that we are learning through the archetype of Aries that it's smarter to use love rather than to use hate, rather than to use violence, rather than to use conflict. And I think there's a lot of that being stirred up right now. I would imagine we might see some really significant art come out these next couple days, these next couple weeks, because Venus can be about art. We can see some women that are really out there protesting and saying that we actually need to be averting war. We need to be de-escalating some of this, move towards some of this stuff. I think real warriors know that hate, anger, frustration, it clouds your vision. It can potentially destroy your body. So whether you're somebody who's in the military or you're an athlete or you're just somebody who's very self-sufficient, you know that you cannot get bogged down with some of those things. So you need an outlet for it. That outlet could be art, right? Venus. It could be poetry. It could be music. It could be sex, because we see Venus moving through a Mars-related sign, and where this makes a lot of potential for, rifts in relationships, but obviously with that can come some makeup sessions. Something that kind of racked my brain a little bit is just over this last week, and I've never heard of it, and I personally think it's a psyop, that's just me, but this talk of World Hate Day that was declared by extremist groups to bully and basically, bother Jewish people. And I think it's kind of wrong that this was just so promoted, and I don't mean in a sense of wrong talking about it. I mean, it's just wrong that this is just something that people are spending their time and their energy doing, that they need a day to be able to promote hate for specific groups that they don't support. These are the kinds of things that we're going to see with Jupiter and Chiron, unfortunately. I think it's also a little disheartening that a little more than a week ago in Washington, D.C., there was an anti-war rally. It was pretty significant. There were people from both sides of the political sides that were there that were promoting this anti-war movement. Got very little to no pickup on any of the mainstream media. But just this past week, we have had a pro-war rally that also happened in the Capitol, but got tons of, feedback, and we hear about it all over the news. I just can't get behind that. I personally can't understand how you can be somebody who may identify as being conservative. This isn't me trying to get political, but conservative and pro-war, and also be pro-life, right? Those things don't go hand in hand. And so I think it's time to start thinking about the ways that we are exercising some of this Aries energy, start becoming more aware of how anger and frustration and violence is potentially affecting ourselves, our bodies, right, and individuals, and where we can really grow and learn a lot and heal and work through a lot of this stuff if we're consciously educating ourselves and learning more about how to heal and how to better kind of handle conflict as a whole. So how might this show up in the world? I guess that's what you're asking me. Well, I've got a list of 4 things. The themes of Venus conjunct Chiron with Jupiter can vary depending on sign, but in particular, I think these are definitely some things that we always see with these transits. One would be relationship wounds. So some of us might be feeling that, we might be experiencing that. It can be an aspect that indicates past relationship wounds that may have led to issues with self-worth, intimacy, or love. If you're experiencing that, know that the awareness of that wound and kind of working through it and adding a little bit of sweetness and healing, or even just talking about it or sharing or giving yourself a little bit of a break can make all the difference. Now, we're also going to see themes of self-love and acceptance. So I think that this is going to be really asking us to focus on that, loving our bodies, loving ourselves for who we are, accepting ourselves for who we are. Individuals, who have this aspect, like I said, can sometimes struggle with self-esteem or self-acceptance, but it's also an opportunity to grow and heal through learning to love ourselves fully, even if we are different than other people. Embrace that healing transformation, because I do think that that's what this is all about. It is going to be towards, guiding us towards opportunities for healing and transformation. I think that we may see some people turning to spiritual healers, turning to new practitioners, doctors, Eastern medicine, and much, much more. I think Jupiter is going to be that wise wisdom. I think Aries might be more trainers, more dietitians. It might be more about self-defense. It might be more about being able to learn how to properly handle also weapons. And so some of us who perhaps may feel like we need to undergo some of that training feel a little bit more safe or a little bit more confident. And that's the other thing that has come up for me a lot with the Jupiter Chiron is it's also going to be about how you identify, right? If you identify as a victim, whether this is a victim of a relationship gone bad, a victim of being mistreated in the workplace, a victim or a black sheep in the family, a victim of, recent things that have gone on in society and feeling isolated or kind of separate. If you're a victim physically of a reaction that you have had from medication, right? These are things that are going to come up. Some people don't like that I'm very outspoken. Frankly, I don't really care. I've learned that I have to just kind of kill people with kindness, and if people don't agree with what I have to say, that's okay. They don't have to watch my videos. But when I look at astrology, I'm looking at astrology very specifically through the archetypal lens of the planets and what they are saying to each other. I'm not here to get political. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. But really ask yourself if you want to identify as a victim. Because if you're identifying as a victim, you're going to lose the magic of the Jupiter-Venus-Chiron conjunction. You're going to instead feel that there is going to be a bigger hole or a bigger wound, or you may feel that you're falling deeper into health-related or challenging situations in relationships. So I think the big part of this is about healing that and deciding not to identify as a victim, instead identifying as somebody who's going to be fighting for love, fighting for peace, fighting for information, fighting for truth. Jupiter is truth, whether you like it or not. That's what it's about. And finally, creative expression. Because the Venus aspect, then that art can be healing, music can be healing, physical touch can be healing. And I think it's going to be encouraging a lot of people to express pain through some of these particular outlets. And it can be very therapeutic and very helpful for a lot of other people who get the chance or the opportunity to be able to read or hear what it is that you have to say, right? Everybody could use a good song to cry to, right? People don't always write great songs about easy things. Some of the best music and art and films come from some rather heavy topics. And I think sharing that with other people can very much be the medicine that we all need. Let me know, how are you guys feeling with this transit? Is it making aspects in your own natal chart, or were you born with a Jupiter, Venus, or Chiron conjunction? I'd love to hear. Keep in mind, like I said, guys, this is going to be happening over a period of time. So I'm going to jump back to this really quick. Here we go. So it's going to be starting with the conjunction happening at 12 degrees, which will be on the 1st. Then we are going to have on the 3rd, Venus and Chiron will come into conjunction at 14 degrees. Then the 11th of March through the 15th, we are going to have the Jupiter Chiron at 14 degrees. So that'll be the 11th through the 15th. That's why I'm saying we're going to feel it for about 2 weeks' time. And then way off into the future. This is way, way, way into the future, but I will bring it up anyway. April 5th, we're going to have a full moon in Libra. But this full moon is actually going to be in opposition to the sun in Chiron. So we're going to see more of these themes come up, especially with an exalted sun conjunct Chiron, exactly at the time of the full moon. Okay, so that's highlighting the pain and the challenges for individuals in regards to relationships. So that's about a month of working with this energy. And then next year, in February of 2024, we are going to see the North Node and Uranus, that was this year, the North Node and Chiron come into conjunction in Aries, also at 16 degrees. So something about that full moon, the beginning of April, is going to highlight something that I do feel like is going to be a bigger theme, which will be taking place. And that conjunction will be for a little while. We're going to have that for about a week or so, that it'll be at 16 degrees. And I'll touch on this more as we get there, but I just wanted to kind of let you guys know why some of these things are coming up. Hopefully you guys are actively playing a role in your own healing. You're helping create space so other people can heal. You're sharing your insight as to what has worked and helped you. It's always amazing to see the people who interact on YouTube, not even just so much on my channel, but just to see people who are so willing to give remedies and recommendations and herbal recommendations and other things to be like, hey, this worked for me, like, try this. I mean, when I got really sick over New Year's, I had a lot of people who were kind enough to leave stuff like that. So if you're somebody who's in the health or healing field and you want to leave any recommendations on the comments below, please do. I would appreciate it. Let me know how you guys are doing with this energy. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, comment, share, and subscribe. It's appreciated. I'm going to be back on Thursday putting together a video to talk to you guys all about that full moon in Virgo and why we really need to focus on the healing and also listening to the spirit. I hope you guys are enjoying your week, and I will see you on Thursday. Take care.